I was like, listen, you gonna fire me today. Oh, this is what I said to her. She laughs at all the time. But I said, you gonna fire me today. I said, but the only way that you are not going to fire me today is if you get that man off me. Because I got a 24-hour call and he's the attending on. I need him not to speak to me. I need him not to say anything to me. If he needs to speak to me, he can speak to me through my juniors. But I don't want to talk to him. And so she made the call. And she said, I don't know what you did to this woman, but please do not talk to her today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to How Do You Medicine podcast, where we talk to healthcare professionals doing medicine their way. I'm your host, Dr. Nancy Joseph, aka The Dynamic Doc. And rounding out Black History Month and starting Women's History Month, we are doing a great panel episode today featuring some great, phenomenal, dynamic, very successful women. And without further ado, let me go ahead and start introducing them. We have Dr. Katrina Byrd, who is a Triple Board-Certified Infectious Disease Specialist and a pediatrician. And she also is going to be the newest member of the CDC coming up soon. And so next we have Dr. Kiki, also known as Dr. Kiki Sharif. She is a multi-lingual physician that is the founder of a startup actually for mental health called Doctors Under the Radar. Actually just finished a mental health summit earlier, just a few months ago. Otherwise, we have Dr. Chanda Nicole Holsey. She is a public health service administrator and also founder of Halo for Families, which really promotes healthy ideas, actions, and aims for the whole entire family. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Renee Volny Darko, who is an entrepreneur, a board-certified OBGYN specialist, founder of Pre-Med Strategies, and a best-selling author of a children's book. I have that here. It's called How Good Old Dr. V Came to Be. Get that. It's a blue cover, so go ahead and pick that up at your convenience. So welcome to the panel, ladies.
Thank you.
Hi. So you guys all look great. And I want to go ahead and give a shout out to our contributors that contributed to some questions we'll be asking you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started with some stats. So ladies, and I'm sure you've heard that women are kind of, booming as far as women when working in general. But, healthcare is no different. In fact, the number of full-time healthcare workers has almost doubled since the year 2000. Has gone from 5 million to 9 million. And so that all sounds great. And we're just like, oh, this is great. More people in healthcare, right? There's a lot of disparities. And, 80% of the overall growth of healthcare is driven by women. That all sounds, and when I found that out, I was like, this is great. 76% of all healthcare jobs are held by women. So like, I'm like, oh, we winning, we doing the thing, right? But then less than 3% of physicians are Black women. Talk to me about those stats and why do you think that is? We'll start with you, Dr. Darko.
So thank you so much, Dr. Joseph, for having me on. That is a very loaded question. I think the answer is so multifaceted. Certainly I don't think that there is a shortage of women who are interested or shortage of little girls who may be interested in medicine or in the sciences. So, that has to do a lot, I think, with kind of what we call the social determinants of health, right? I think that definitely plays a part. Where do we live? Where do we grow? Where do we learn? What opportunities do we have? And certainly, again, like I said, because it is such a multifaceted problem, the solution has to be multifaceted, right? So, I mean, this is part of why I do some of the work that I do with pre-med students, is to be able to get at the very least some of the root, some of the root of the problem. Oftentimes I will encounter, pre-meds, especially underrepresented pre-meds, Black and brown pre-meds, who have actually gone through the fire, made it all the way through, to be able to go to college, and then to be told that they should not enter medicine for whatever reason. And so, this is part of the work that I do, trying to combat that and letting them know that, listen, this is a challenging field, and just because you are encountering a challenge doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make it. So that, I mean, that literally is just one barrier that I'm identifying, but there are just so many more.
All right, anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll chime in. So I think part of it is also the mindset and the limiting beliefs that we tend to have. First and foremost, being women. Back in the day, which still perpetuates till today, is that women are supposed to be in the home. You can't have a successful mom, wife, and working woman, and that brings a discord in the family, and the struggles, and then the issues, and then add to that being a Black woman, in which we are supposed to focus on surviving and making sure that everybody around us is okay, and that strong woman phenotype, it debilitates us, and it creates an environment where we are constantly doubting ourselves. We're constantly feeling like imposters. We're constantly questioning if we can do it. We constantly don't even believe in ourselves. Our esteems are low, and we don't see somebody that looks like us. So we don't necessarily have people that you can say, oh girl, you got this, and believe it, because you're thinking they're either condescending you, or they're just patting you on the back, or doing things just to get you in the game and, bring you down versus uplift you. But without representation and our limiting beliefs, it becomes a vicious cycle in which we don't necessarily want to go into it, because we don't have a way out. We don't see the entrance in. We don't have people coming in and saying you can do it. And like Dr. Darko said, people telling us we can't, and we swallow that instead of forging forward. It creates a lot of problems. So that's just one other aspect I see.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think representation matters, right? And sometimes you don't know what you could be until you see a glimpse of it. You don't even know a door exists, right? Until sometimes you even stumble upon it, versus, like a representation of something. Oh, wow, I didn't know any physicians before this. Oh, this is great. And you came from a background similar to mine. Oh, this is my door that I didn't know existed. I love what Dr. Darko and Dr. Kiki said, for sure.
I just want to add one other
Dr.
thing.
Byrd.
I think that there is also a barrier in the K through 12 system. I think that when it comes to African Americans, I'm an African American, so I feel like I can speak from that perspective. There are two systems. One, you have families who parents or guardians are college educated, and they know how to get their child to college. And then once they get to college, they experience some of the struggles that Dr. Darko was talking about in terms of, the lack of it. If you're not a 4.0 student and you don't have all these extracurricular activities, then, are you good enough to be a doctor? And I personally experienced that. So that's one piece. The other kind of bucket that I see children go into is, look, I don't even know how to get to college. I don't even, for example, I know a young lady who is very smart. It's just that her family, she's having difficulty navigating the financial aid system. And she doesn't necessarily have the family support to help her go through that. She doesn't know who to ask. And so she's sitting the semester out. And I told her, no, you can't, you're going to sit this one semester out, and then we're going to help you get through it. But you have like those barriers that for some families aren't barriers, but for others are. Like, how do I apply to college? How do I get funding for college? Let's say I get in, but oh, okay, you can't afford it, then okay, you're not going to college. And those barriers are still in existence in our community.
And I would like to add to that. I think what you said is so critical. There are so many resources that people are just not aware of. When I was in college, I was in the Minority Access to Research Careers, an NIH-funded program to help people do research, go to conferences, help pay for tuition, things like that, to expose them to other people. And I was exposed. I had a mentor, but my mentor wasn't African American. And so when you also talk about representation, I didn't see, a lot of, I'm in public health, so I didn't see a lot of Black African American public health practitioners and things like that. But I had a very good Caucasian psychology mentor, and she helped to propel me to different levels. But I think too, I came from an underprivileged background, and we didn't know how to navigate the system. We didn't know about different programs that were available. And so now I can teach my children, network, look into these programs, that kind of thing. But I think, some people that may be first generation college, they don't know. So like you said, there are so many barriers that we just have to cross before we can get to the point where we're applying to medical school and that kind of thing. And then a lot of us, I work for the National Medical Association, so I engage with a lot of, young doctors. Sometimes they don't match. And then I see some outreaching to the NMA, the internal medicine section, to past presidents and that kind of thing. And figuring out what it is that they need to do to match the following year. But then some get defeated and may give up. So then there is that pool too that have made it all that way. And then there are not enough residency matches available for them. And then their career might be over right then. So there's just a lot of different factors that explains your question, Dr. Joseph.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Dr. Holsey, because you guys have brought up so many great points, from representation to resources, to really just encouragement, right? I mean, we all have our, what I call our tribes, right? Our close friends who, because, there are some days where maybe you don't feel like you can conquer the world. And when you have all those things on your shoulders and you have no one that's done it that may be hard. It may be harder to keep going because I don't know anyone that's kept going. So what am I, if you've not known anybody that's climbed Mount Everest and here you go, you may not know how to tackle the certain challenges that comes with climbing that mountain. But, so to that end, do you guys ever feel like you're the representative, like Black person, Black woman in a room, like, I'm the only chocolate chip, this is it, representing the whole, and whether it's as a Black woman or a woman itself, but like, do you guys ever feel that way? And anyone can start.
I'll start. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was I'll start. Yes.
Yes. I mean,
yes, I have.
And I'm pretty sure everyone on this panel does. And I think, I'll just give you an example of something that just happened this week. And this is not pertaining to medicine, but it's public service. I'm on the advisory board for our local YMCA, right? And we're looking for new board members. And I believe that representation matters, right? So, and I live in a predominantly white neighborhood, affluent. We live in a great community. But I go out of my way to find people that look like me, to talk to them about opportunities that are available that they may not know of. And so there's a young lady, she has children, she's a principal for a school, and her kids go to the Y. And I called her and I said, hey, Nicole, I think you should consider this. And she gave me a million reasons why she shouldn't. I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. I said, but look, representation matters. You have 3 African-American sons that attend this YMCA. Your voice matters, your opinion matters, and you need to be on the board, right? And so I was able to established a meeting with her, with our board chair and the director of our Y, and she met. And she said it went great. All of her questions were answered. But I mean, I think that's what it is. It's like sometimes we don't know people in those positions that have a seat at the table that'll bring us to the table. But when we have the opportunity to do that, we need to. Because I just think, how proud her boys are going to be of her, how proud her husband, and how proud her community is going to be of her. So that happens. I mean, and I'm the only one on the board.
The only chocolate chip.
The only chocolate chip, and hopefully we'll have to soon. Yeah.
Gotcha. Perfect. That's a great, it sounds like you're saying, yes, I felt that way, but also I've tried to change that actively.
Absolutely.
So anyone else have the only chocolate chip episode or experience?
It was funny because you asked a question and we all started smiling and nodding. So it was just like evident, right? Like we all felt it. But part of my experience was in residency. I was the only Black female. The other solace was that I had a Black male that was also a part of my residency year. So it lightened the load a little bit, but you didn't have that womanly touch and that womanly advice. And even for the mentors, it felt more like the Black mentors were still trying to survive and thrive and fit in and didn't necessarily have the time to give back and provide you with as much information or reach out or any kind of assistance that you really desired or you would want or you felt left out. And then I worked at a hospital where a lot of the doctors were non-American, but they still weren't Black. And so it was like a lot of cultural differences, which was fun. It was a melting pot, but still you wanted that, familiarity breeds comfort. And it was a lot of moments where it was just like, I was talking to the techs and everybody was like, girl, and it was just like, once you said that, they know the compressed moment, versus, you had to explain the whole situation. So yeah, there was definitely moments throughout my career. And that's just one where it was just very interesting and you learn, you survive, right? But it could have been better and there could have been things and people there to lighten the load.
Yeah, that I'm sure it would have been helpful to be able to share that experience with someone.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like the ladies have said here, I mean, I think especially when you get to this level of education and this type of career, there's no way that you are never, ever going to be the only person, right, who is quote unquote the representative of the culture at some point in time. And what I've found is that, for me, I know that there is an expectation for me to be the representative of the entire group when there is no one who looks like me. But the reality is being Black is not homogeneous, right? Like,
not a monolith at all.
Right, exactly. So, that's one thing that I feel that, I don't know, for me, I have always kind of felt like, yeah, I know you want me to be the representative Black person, but I'm not. And I am Black, don't get me wrong. And I will bring up issues, but let us be clear that the issues that I bring up that's not where it starts and that's not where it stops, because there are other people who are in my culture who have other experiences. And so you have to be, very aware and cognizant of that. And so just because I'm here and I'm sharing with you my experience, don't take for granted that that is the only experience. That is not I am not the representative Black experience where you can take everyone, in my culture and say, well, you all fit into this box. And so I think I've been very fortunate with my upbringing. My parents are Haitian, and I think that, like Dr. Joseph, I think that actually has a lot to do with it. The fact that they grew up in a country that really was never truly ruled by white people, and so colonialism was essentially squashed very, very early on in Haiti's history. And so I think that actually has something to do with it. The way that my parents kind of raised me, I think, is a lot different than some of the experiences you know, that my friends and my colleagues have had, even that my husband has had. So, you know, I have a very different lens when it comes to that being the only chocolate chip in the room. I'm like, you're not going to treat me, you know, like I'm about to tell you the like all the secrets, because you need
Right.
to understand that there is a lot here that needs to be unpacked. And you're not going to use me as, you know, look at what we did. We brought her in and now we're done. You're not done. You have a lot more work to do.
So I think that's really, really important. So I definitely share, like, I've definitely had a lot of similar experiences as, you know, everyone just mentioned. But the one thing that as I'm getting older, I'm learning, what can I bring people along, you know, with me as I move through the journey of medicine, you know, knowing what I can and can't do, just kind of learning that, you know, yes, I can be a mentor, but I'm not going to be able to be a mentor to everyone. You know, yes, I can be a sponsor and recommend someone or provide a reference for a job, but I can't do that for everyone. The other thing that I've learned is you have, as a minority, you really, who is passionate about diversity in medicine, you really have to be careful how your job or your institution is trying to use you. Because, you know, are you being asked to do uncompensated work? You know, is the work that you're being asked, how is that going to translate to advancement in your career? Whether it's, you know, trying to get tenure or trying to advance the academic medicine ladder. And I've had to say no a lot. And I don't like saying no. I'm like a yes person. I love to give of myself freely. But in the last year, it's literally been killing me to say yes. I've gained weight. You know, like my health isn't where it needs to be. So recently I'm in the spirit of no, like yes to the things I can do, but no to the things I can't, and really looking at, okay, well, they want us to, you know, sponsor these medical students or talk to this panel. Yes, but, you know, what is the angle? You know, oh, so because people will try to take advantage of you, especially if you have a heart to give back, especially to people and students of color. So you really have to have a sort of self-preservation in your, I don't want to say guard up, but, you know, people will try to use you being a minority against you, because they'll try to guilt you into, oh, well, it's not many people who look like you. You know, you have to be the one to be involved and spearhead this. And it's like, no. Or you negotiate, okay, if you want me to do this, then I need to take something off my plate so that I'm able to do this. And I think as women, in general, but especially women of color, it's very difficult to do that. And I'm learning that lesson now.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Give back, be like, you know, do what you can, but also self-preserve, because self-care is very, very, very important. You know, but again, show up. I think you ladies have been kind of saying like, show up, but also, you know, set expectations. Yes, I am Black and I'm proud to be Black, but I do not speak for the entire race of Black people. Just because maybe I'm the only Black physician you've encountered, you know, Black healthcare professional that you've encountered, does not mean that all of them are like me or, you know, have the same views that I have even. So then, you know, and sometimes depending on your personality, you know, different types of dynamics at work, you may have to, you know, figure out how to like navigate like that, like Dr. Byrd was saying. To that end, have there ever been times when you guys, or when you ladies feel like you have to either mute yourself, shrink yourself, or like do any like modifications where, you know, you can't fully be yourself? You have to kind of mute yourself or shrink yourself just to make either your male or your, you know, white counterparts more comfortable.
So that was me briefly. I spent 4 years in residency doing that. And I was like my true self, you know, outside of the hospital. But in the last 4 years, I've learned that I'm awesome and that I never, like, it was a fatal mistake to try to minimize myself or mute myself just to try to get through. And I've had so many blessings and so many opportunities open up because I was my true self. So I personally think it's not worth it to kind of diminish yourself, shrink yourself, change your personality just to make somebody else comfortable.
Yes, snaps. Okay, Dr. Byrd. You are awesome, Dr. Byrd.
I was going to say, I don't know if I've ever muted myself. I think the only time I've ever muted myself is on Zoom.
Oh, hilarious. Love it.
That has been actually a really hard thing that I have had to encounter is that, I don't necessarily mute myself. I'm not obnoxious, obviously, but at the same time, I think it's important to be able to kind of advocate for yourself, and there are times when, your advocacy has to be strategic, right? So there's a difference between muting yourself and actually having strategic, types of
Advocacy.
interactions and advocacy, right? Where you may not come out, full on, saying all the things that you want to say, but you also not just going to sit there and take it, and I'll give you an example, so my residency program, we were somewhat diverse. I was not the only, Black person in my residency program. We weren't many, but we were few. And I had an attending who, I don't know what his problem was, but he literally just loathed me for whatever reason, just hated me for whatever reason. And so no matter what I did, what I said, even things I didn't do, he would just come after me for it. And finally, he comes in and he berates me. And I was like, I had a choice. I said, well, I could give him these hands, which would not be professional, and potentially get out of residency, or I could deal with him in another way. And so I let him, talk, whatever. And finally I said, I'm gonna deal with him in another way. And I called my backup. And my backup was, I called the head of GYN, who was the chief of GYN. And she, she's currently my mentor today still. And I said to her, I was like, listen, you gonna fire me today. Oh, this is what I said to her. She laughs at it all the time. But I said, you gonna fire me today. I said, but the only way that you are not going to fire me today is if you get that man off me. Because I got a 24-hour call and he's the attending on. I need him not to speak to me. I need him not to say anything to me. If he needs to speak to me, he can speak to me through my juniors, but I don't want to talk to him. And so she made the call and she said, I don't know what you did to this woman, but please do not talk to her today. And, it was about using your resources. So sometimes you may not be the one to say the words, but you can find someone to say the words for you. So that in that way, you're technically not necessarily muting yourself because you have found a very strategic way to advocate for yourself. And if you're lucky, and I think I was lucky in that situation to have someone who was in my corner. We don't always have that. So when you do, use it.
And to piggyback off of that, Dr. Darko, that's actually a good point. How does, let's say someone is looking for, or is in the process right now, right, of looking for, okay, which residency, because we're getting close to where the match, your list has to be turned in and all that stuff. And now you have to decide on programs. How do they decide whether that program has that advocacy resource, right? Because as we've all mentioned, they're going to come out as if, hey, we love, because now everyone has a diversity clause. Everyone has a we love color clause. Everyone has a, yeah, come in. Oh, with your fro? Sure. You know what I mean? Like everyone has that, has that facade and you don't know which real and what's not. What advice would you give to say, you know, someone who's like, how do I know this program has the proper advocacy? Should I go into that? Because I had a similar a situation in my residency, didn't go as you know, it was kind of like, you know how he is type of situation more than an advocacy, get it, you know, act right type of situation.
That, I mean, that is a tough thing. And I'm telling you, I deal with this with the pre-meds too, because they look at a website and the website says holistic application process and diversity focus. And that's great. That's great marketing, but that isn't necessarily always true. And so sometimes you're going to know that because you have a little bit of an inside scoop. You have students potentially who you may know who are in that program. You may have residents who you know who've gone through that program, and they'll be able to tell you, share their experiences with you so that, you know, you can kind of gauge really what the climate is of that particular program. But I have to say, oftentimes you really are not going to know until you're in the thick of it. And that's the scary part. That's the really scary part, is that you're not going to know until you're in the thick of it. But I think what's important is, again, if you have it in your program, you know, to use a resource to be able to advocate for yourself, or to be able to strategically navigate if you do encounter the, you know, that's how that person is. You're going to need somebody to at least help you to strategically navigate that, or have someone outside, you know, of the institution to help you kind of, you know, just be that sounding board for you, to give you some ideas. In other words, try not to go at it alone. And I think one of the ladies mentioned here, you know, we always think we got to do it on our own. We got to do it by ourselves. You do not have to do it by yourself. And it doesn't always have to be a person of color who might advocate for you. You know, sometimes we're trying to do that peer-to-peer, you know, or that, you know, that underrepresented to underrepresented. But because there aren't as many of us to go around, sometimes we do have to go outside of the group and say, listen, I see here that this person actually will be a good sounding board or a good advocate for me. Let me, you know, go to this person and see if they would be willing to help.
That's great advice. And also, don't be afraid to get to know that person before you get into something, you know, because sometimes we are like, you know, we seek for the resources when we're in the thick of the issue. But if you know that there's a possibility of that being the case, okay, all right, who's the director of diversity and inclusion? All right, let me talk to him. Hey, this is my face. This is who I am. We're great. You know, maybe we can, you know, have feedback. You can give me some, you know, advice or some pointers. And that's not just, you know, being a physician. That's any, you know, job. Like, show face. Hey, how are you? Great. So that way, you know, having an issue is not the first time you see me. I'll actually ask Dr. Holsey, because I know, you know, being in the public health space, it's a little bit different dynamic, right? There's not necessarily like an attending to, you know, that type of hierarchy, but I'm sure, you know, you being in different spaces yourself, you know, sitting in kind of that in between where you are, you know, in the National Medical Association, all these associations and organizations that have different types of hierarchies. So how does, let's say someone is in the public health space, how do you either cultivate that level of advocacy, or even see, you know, go back to even find, okay, how do I find a mentor? How do I find a mentor, or do I just kind of talk to leadership just so they know me?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the same, but some similar guidances. Like when we're in school, you have an opportunity to meet faculty. And I went to Emory. It wasn't a lot of us, but like Dr. Darko said, there were people that are interested in people of color. I mean, you can tell when people have a heart and that are really concerned, because it shows in the work that they do. You know, it could be their research initiatives or whatnot, and perhaps do some research with those professors When I was at Emory, I had got a research project where I did some work. I've always been involved in community efforts, public health. Maternal and child health issues have always driven me, and so I worked in community and implemented public health initiatives there. And I stayed involved with some of those people. One of my mentors, we wrote a book chapter together. But it was because, so I've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, but it was because just connecting with those folks and following up on opportunities. Opportunities will become available and then doing them. I'm just intrinsically motivated, and I know not everyone is like me. I have a very fast circadian rhythm, but what I try to do is, I saw this quote once, it says, surround yourself with people that will talk about you when you're not in the room, right? And so that's what I try to do for a lot of the women in my life. They might be early career professionals, or they may be higher in their career, but they've not sat on boards, or they've not been a part of different committees and that kind of thing, and just bringing them along. And in the NMA, fortunately, I have a lot of influence. I'm able to just bring people along with me, as we go through this journey together. Public health and medicine. I've actually written a grant every year, and it actually just got a 5-year grant award from the National Institutes of Health, our R13 early career travel grant, where we bring in early career medical students, residents, to do their research. And that's a way too that they can connect with some of the faculty and attendings there and stay in contact with them. So there's just a lot of different things that one can do. You just have to really make yourself available and go out and participate in those activities.
Yeah, and I love that. And I want to actually rein you in, Dr. Kiki. What do you feel, because in these realms, again, you do due diligence, you do the work, and then there are some times where you may feel like either unseen or unheard, right? Well, I'll kind of bring Dr. Kiki in. What have been some challenges where you feel like, you were not seen or heard as, try as you might, and how did you overcome those?
Well, I'm kind of like Dr. Darko. You're going to see me, you're going to hear me. And part of the thing is, I agree, before I even answer that one of the things that you should do is, if you know you're that type of person, create your tribe early on. Create those people that will advocate for you, because I do know for a fact, when you have a presence, when you have the confidence, and you are a Black woman, someone is going to want to break you down, bring you down, shut you up. So if you can have that team that knows you, knows the heart of you before that happens, then people can advocate for you. People can create avenues for you and just be like, yeah, that's how he is, but there's going to be a but in there. And they will have your back. But for me, a lot of the times, what I have done was that tribe, my family, first and foremost, my go-to. I'm having that moment, actually God first. It's like, God, you got to get me through this. Listen, you know me, my mouth. And if I don't say it, you see it in my face. Help me through this, because they're going to find me today. That's what I sound with Dr. Darko. I've had to have those conversations. It's just like, listen, I've been brought in front of, other people, and it's like, we're going to hash this out. And it's just like, for why? So it's just having those people around you that can have your back, but then bring you back down to earth, I should say. Because, they'll also be like, I know you, Kiki, what did you say? Be like, well, I did say X, Y, and Z. And they'd be like, well, you got to be a little bit more PC. You got to be a little bit calmer and work with you. Or they'll say, you can do this better, or project yourself better, or present yourself better. So having that is important. So with having that tribe, but then also always work on self. Know what you did wrong. Know what you did right. Know what you can do better, and know what you can improve upon is always important. So whether you got an A+ or an F-, figure out what you could have done to better the situation, or figure out what you can improve upon. Figure out how you start with I, right? And not what I'm good at, but not to say what I'm bad at, but what can I improve upon? Because mindset, I'm big on mindset, especially these days. Within the business, I'm an entrepreneur and a Black female. It's known in this space, we don't get a lot of funding, we don't get a lot of support, we don't get a lot of opportunities, but yet we're expected to play with the big boys and have results like the big boys and present like the big boys and do like the big boys. And there's not a lot out there. And, I was in a conversation that they would say Black women are known to have more interns working for them than anything. They're known to do more roles for themselves. Like they're the marketing, sales, they're everybody, while other people will have the opportunity to do more. And it's rough. I am dealing with physician and clinician mental health, and I'm trying to prevent burnout. But this job is like, it's rough. So knowing how to use my voice, which is what I did, I started just reaching out to people. I went on LinkedIn and I was like, I like your title. I like your description. I'm going to reach out. Like, I'm going to tell my story. And I started doing stuff like that and getting to know people and just saying, look, this is where I am. This is who I am. This is why I'm doing it. This is how I'm doing it. Can you help me? And it's either a yes or no. And if it's a no, I'm usually like, do you know someone that can? It doesn't just stop there. And if you don't know somebody that can, do you know how to help me get to the next step? Or do you know how to help me get this resource? I'm big on resources. So I'm also like Dr. Holsey. Throughout my life, I've been either getting resources or giving resources. From middle school, I've been doing pipeline programs in the hospitals. So I've always been hustling. I've always been a person to get up and go. And if you tell me no, it's like, excuse me, I'm gonna find a yes. I don't say no, especially when it comes onto my profession. One of the things I've said is never tell yourself no. I've applied and gotten scholarships for Jewish women, for Hispanic. Because they want to give the money away and they're going to go through certain tiers. And as long as you meet 95% of the qualifications, why not? So, when it boils down to it, if you don't have the tribe, because I can't pretend that everybody has the capabilities or abilities to have a tribe. Some people are just intrinsically quiet and they don't like to reach out and do things. And so if you don't have the tribe, then find the resources, find the means, find the wherewithal, find things that will help you either educate yourself, promote yourself, or produce better results than you already have. Because to me, a closed mouth never gets fed. So, we're not asking anybody to change who they are. Just find a voice that represents you so you can get stuff done and represent yourself in a manner that produces results. Because for the rest of your life, from the day you were born to the day you die, you're going to be fighting for representation and a seat at the table as a Black woman, or Blacks, period.
I love that. I love that. Find a resource that works for you. Like Dr. Holsey saying, she's, intrinsically motivated. And so some people need like extrinsic forces to keep them going. She has an internal engine that works really well. We love her for it. But some of us need, that go girl, like, oh, that's right, I can. All right. And then you got to lift your head up. Some of us got to read that book, How Good Old Dr. V Came to Be. Like, oh, I did. Okay. Yes, I could do this. But whether it's a book, whether it's a tribe, whether it's a group, whether it's a resource, whether it's a motivational speech that you stumbled upon, as Dr. Kiki said, find whatever that is that motivates you. So let me ask you, ladies, so here you are, you found that, you're trucking along, things are going okay. Like for the physicians on the, the panel, you go into the room, got your white coat on, or your nice shiny scrubs if you are an OBGYN, because y'all, I think, usually just wear the scrubs, the white coat somewhere. And you go in, your name badge is like, Dr. Darko, Dr. Byrd. And then someone's just like, hey, you're like, hey, Mr. Jones, hey, I'm waiting on the doctor. Let me call you back. I think the nurse just walked in. So my question is, we talked about the statistics of, women physicians, right? Granted, less than 3% of physicians are women. However, that's not a foreign sight, right? To have for a woman to be a doctor, it's not like unheard of. Why do you think that still happens? And Dr. Byrd, I'll bring you in because I feel like we've talked about this. Why do you think that happens? That time and time again, I've had my own personal experience, that you walk in hey, let me call you back. The nurse just walked in. Hey, you know how long the doctor is gonna be? I was like, in the flesh, I'm her. And it's why do you think that is?
I still think that it's really hard to believe that my doctor is Black. Like, I still like encounter that. Like when I introduce myself, I'm like, hey, I'm Dr. Byrd. People are still shocked, and most people are excited, especially if they're a person of color. It's still hard for them to register. So I personally give people grace, and I actually don't wear a white coat. So I'm like, hey, good morning. My name is Dr. Byrd. And every time I see them, I will continue to say, my name is Dr. Byrd. My name is Dr. Byrd. My name is Dr. Byrd, until they get it. You know, I personally don't. I used to take it like, oh, why are they doing this? Like, and get frustrated. But I realized that, you know, they just haven't seen a physician of color. That's whether that is true or not. I don't take it as disrespectful. I don't take it as being racist or sexist. I just say, look, I am your doctor. You may or may not have seen someone who looks like me, but today I'm your infectious disease doctor, and this is the plan I have for you. You know, and you just say, hey, when you introduce yourself, hi, my name is Dr. Byrd, enough. And I'm blessed enough to have a very short name. So, you know, for people who have longer names, I definitely understand how it can be challenging. You know, people tend to get it. And that's how I approach it. I don't take it personally. I just continue to remind people, look, this is who I am, and this is my role in your care. And make sure it's extremely clear.
I like that.
Yeah, I agree. There is some level of ignorance to it, you know, like you gotta call a spade a spade. Like there's some people, and when I counter those people, you know, I'm usually like, oh, you know, you can call me Dr. Kiki because my name is hard to pronounce. But once I get that, it's like, no, this is Dr. Sharif today. And we're gonna get to deal with you. But you know, it's no longer that let me get to know you type of thing. It's gonna be a relationship where it's just like, let's break that down first. And so you have to put on that hard external outer composition of yourself. And it's not always cute. It's not always fun. It's hard because you're supposed to be trying to get to the heart of the person, but there's this barrier, and it's based on who you are and your race without even them getting to know you. And for the most part, it turns out to be their ignorance and their lack of understanding and not knowing that, listen, this person is educated just as much, and what you heard or what you may have seen, that's not the case. And so even though you try to put on this hard outer shell, there's still part of you that's just like, you're not going to get down to their level. And I agree. Like in the beginning, it was just like, oh my gosh, you know, I sometimes went into a room like, they're going to judge me. They're going to judge me. They're going to judge me. And then it got to the point was like, doesn't matter. Just go in, be yourself, do what you have to do, take care of them, do your utmost best, and keep it moving, whether they are racist or not. And it's hard because whether they're a pedophile or not, like certain things where you sit there and it's like morally is wrong, you have to sit there and say, they need the treatment, they need the care, they need whatever they need from you, and they have to go. And you have to do your utmost best. So it doesn't matter how they view you or how you view them. You have to do what you have to do to get them in, to get them out, and get them seen. It's not easy, but then I'm a family medicine physician by trade. So then you go into the next room and then it's the people rooting for you like, girl, you are a Black doctor. Oh my God, can my daughter talk to you? So you get the shock and then you get the happiness, you get the, you know, the letdown. So it's kind of like in one day, you can get so many emotions, and it's a lot to deal with, but you just have to, once again, I'm gonna say mindset. You just have to know who you are, what you stand for, what you believe, and have your own moral compass inside, and just know you are worth it. You are good enough. You are smart enough. You are beautiful enough. You are strong enough. And you can do whatever you put your mind to. And this patient is going to get the utmost care. And easier said than done, but it comes with time, and it does come with practice, and it comes with conscious effort.
Dr. Darko, what happens when somebody calls you, when the body assumes you're everything else other than a doctor?
I gotta be honest, I don't think that's ever actually happened to me.
Gas clutches pearls. What?
Yes, I don't think that that actually has ever happened, at least not to my face.
Well,
Right?
you're OB-GYN. When they meet you, you're just like, I'm delivering this baby.
Well, even in the office, I
I
don't
think you're
even,
lucky. I think
Yeah.
you're very, very lucky.
I didn't want to unmute, but yes, God bless you. That's
Yes.
beautiful.
I
Y'all
don't,
can unmute. You can stay on mute. That's fine.
that has actually never happened, at least not to my face, right? Like it might
A
have been like, you know,
presence.
right. It might be that. It might be my
Yeah.
presence. But I will tell you that no one has ever asked me, you know, when is a doctor coming in? But I have had oh, you're the doctor? Now,
Hmm.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach and say, I think that, so I have an MBA as well. And so I'm going to take it from a little bit of a different approach because I'm going to think about this. I want you guys to kind of open your minds a little bit and think about this like we think about marketing, right? And bias, right? Bias is a big part of marketing, you know, and marketers know this. Marketing, you know, execs and advertisers know this. In order to create brand bias, right, you have to have really good marketing, and there are things that you have to do. So you have to create associations in people's minds with things that will attract them to that thing and potentially, you know, allow them to choose something over something else. And most biases are actually biases towards something, not necessarily away from something, right? Like I don't want that. It's usually I want this, right? So if you have two brands of ketchup, if you're in a foreign country and you have two brands of ketchup and they say, do you want Heinz or do you want Vigo? You're gonna be like, I want Heinz, because you know Heinz, you're familiar with it. It tastes good. You've had good experiences with it. So you're not necessarily going to pick the Vigo not because you don't like Vigo, but because you don't know it and you don't know what experience you're going to have. So where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is that oh, you're the doctor comes not only from my white patients, but also from my Black patients. Because my Black patients, I have to ask, why are they so surprised that I'm the doctor? Right? And that goes towards the branding, right? Back to the branding of, well, because usually when we are faced with doctor on TV, in the media, in a book, in a whatever, what are we faced with? We are usually faced with a white male. That's what they're used to seeing. So even the white patient and the Black patient have the same experience of seeing the white male constantly. So when I walk into a room and I get, you're the doctor, right? I have to question, is this racism or is this branding? Because when I walk into the white patient's room, I might be a little taken aback, like, are they racist? But when I walk into the Black patient's room, I'm faced with, oh, they weren't expecting me and now they're happy that I'm the one. But either way, they're both surprised that I am the doctor that walked into the room. So it's hard to gauge. Now, if you're having an experience where you have someone who insists that no, you are not the doctor, after you have said to them that you are, well, then now you're dealing with, that's not branding no more. Now
Right.
You're dealing with something else. You're dealing with something that is not branding. You're probably dealing with some sort of prejudice, bigotry, something else. But just that initial response, you got to delve deeper before you then decide why the person said what they said or why they reacted the way that they reacted. And then once you can delve deeper into that, then you can decide, well, what exactly is this? So, my experience is a little bit different and I see it from a different lens. But, certainly that is not to say or diminish that there have been certainly Black physicians, my husband included, who have been told, I don't want you to be my doctor because you're Black. So,
Wow.
you know, that definitely does exist. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes we have to deal with it. And I don't know that I will never experience that in my career. I might. So
You probably will.
Thank you, Dr. Byrd.
I mean, you
Dr.
probably
Byrd said,
will.
"Wait
Like,
for
it's
it."
happened too many
wait for
times
it.
to me.
Hold my beer.
You
Dr.
don't,
Byrd
though.
leave
I'm
there
gonna
like,
hope you don't.
it'll happen.
No, I'm hoping you don't. Like, it's good to just, sometimes it's good to be naive and, you know, to have that innocent
But you know what?
mindset.
Not even naive, because you know what happened, because it's happened to her husband. But it's good to like be like, this could happen. It didn't.
could.
I'm
Oh,
glad
I think we all know it definitely could happen, but I'm loving. I'm
that it
honestly
didn't.
happy that it didn't happen. It's
We
just
were
like,
all shocked. Like, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Dr.
Speaking of
Bird's
which,
face was like, really though?
Dr. Byrd was like,
still is.
when you say didn't, you mean like ever, or you mean the past
Face
couple
was like,
years? Like when?
Ah,
What?
you a lie.
Let's define.
I ain't gonna
Maury,
lie,
come
I
on
like
out.
lies.
Come on
I
out,
said
Maury.
lies, the
Let
lies
me.
itself. I felt my accent come out in my head.
No, but listen, I'm super happy that is the case. That just means that you've been in like environments that have been surprised but inviting, right? So what happens, or guys, have you guys ever experienced, and wherever you worked, whether in the healthcare field or others, that maybe your white counterparts or someone, you know, that's maybe not Black treated you different? Whether like maybe they talk to you in a certain way, or they're the way, whether their cadence, the way they talk to you isn't a little bit, you know, different than they, you know, talk to their like white counterparts. I'll start with you, Dr. Holsey.
Not really, but what I detest is when a white woman calls me girl. Girl. I mean, and that happens so often. I mean, it could be in the workplace, or like I said, just kind of out in my community. I'm on a lot of boards out here, and you know, usually the only African American woman, but they'll say something and girl, and I'm just like, really? And I might address it or might not, but it's something that just irritates me, you know, and it happens more frequently than you would imagine.
When you do address it, what do you say? Like, how do you even?
Just like, no, I mean, I'll just tell them that's not an appropriate thing to say. I'm pretty direct.
Okay.
And I'll just let them, I think that they do it to become more familiar or whatnot, and they may think that it's appropriate, or I want to hear that. And I usually just say, don't do that. Something like that. I might kind of laugh it off or whatnot, but I'm just like, don't.
Cut that off. Got it.
Yes.
You're like,
Cut it out.
Right. Cut it out. Next subject on the agenda.
Yes.
I did. Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Byrd.
Yeah, it's happened to me a lot. I think it's happened to me more when I was in a less diverse environment, but two reasons or two circumstances in which I can say that someone talked down to me, especially someone who is Caucasian. So in the beginning of my residency, it was really difficult. If you do like a combined residency, I did internal medicine, pediatrics, it is difficult. You're learning two separate specialties, and it definitely takes time to get acclimated. And, you know, my confidence was in being a physician. It took me time to build. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm here as a confident physician. Like, it took me, in regards to my confidence, to slowly increase. So in my early days, you know, I was very vocal when I said, look, I'm not quite sure what to do with this patient. This is what I think is going on, but, you know, what do you think? And sometimes people took that for weakness and use that, because I was so I'm never going to hide, look, I know it all and this is what it is. No, I'm actually, I don't know, to a flaw, very, very transparent when I'm really struggling with something or medical decision making with my colleagues, not necessarily in front of patients. And so when I was on a cardiology rotation, I struggled because I really wasn't that confident, and this colleague took it upon himself to be very condescending and to really just say, oh, this. In that moment, I did not stick up for myself. In that moment, I just allowed myself to feel low. And when I look back on it, I say, you know what? I never want this to happen again. You know, I got better, you know, and as my confidence increased, I'm like, well, I don't deserve to be treated like this at all. You know, I had to like really build myself up. I don't deserve to be talked down to. I don't deserve to be treated like this. And it doesn't matter if my knowledge base is here or here. This is a training program where if I am here, you know, help me get here, not demean me or talk down to me. And so it really just took a lot of self-confidence in myself to really get beyond that. Now I'm extremely confident and I get less of that, but I do sometimes see how people will try to speak in a quote unquote Black vernacular, like quote unquote, like what they see on TV. And I just encourage people, look, just be yourself. You know, I'm from Detroit. So sometimes that like Detroit accent come out or whatever, but like, I'm like, just be you. You don't have to talk a certain way. And I tell people, you just have to be you, your authentic self to work in front of your patients, because people can tell when you're not being yourself. And so I just, in this journey called life in medicine, I've learned a lot about myself. And I will admit that when people talk down to me, when I had racist encounters, because I've had, you know, quite a few, you know, in the beginning of my career, I didn't handle them well at all. And I really felt down, and it kind of sometimes made me lose confidence. But as I, you know, build myself up, gain medical knowledge, got my board certifications, and now I'm, you know, just older and have more life experience. When I do encounter racist patients, I don't let it faze me. I'm like, look, this is my name. This is my role in your care. This is what I can offer you. Now, whether you take it or not is up to you.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to bring Dr. Kiki in too, because there's two kind of dynamics, and also Dr. Darko, because there's the cultural dynamic, right? Because the moment Dr. Kiki comes on, you know, you have the Jamaican twang, so there's that, and you have, you know, there's, you know what I mean? So people just like, because, you know, you can get that question, but where are you from? Oh, okay, yeah, I'm from Jersey. But where you from? Okay, Jersey. So I don't, what that mean? So, you know, what are your experiences in just like people maybe like acting different around you, just whether colleagues or otherwise, just, you know, from a Black perspective and also maybe cultural?
Yeah, from both perspectives, because I'm also tall, I'm also thick. So it's like when you go into a room, especially with a white man, they want to exert this power. And then you go in and then you say certain things. And sometimes you could feel them talking down to you. My mind, I go into like different stages of like, first it's like, you really talking to me like this? My hands start shaking and I'm like, I have to swallow, deep breathe. And then I go into, by the end of this conversation, you're going to show him who you are, keep your composure, you know, do what you got to do. Don't go toe to toe to him. Don't go batting with him. And, you know, deal with him in a manner where it's just like, now my big words are coming out. My education is about to show, right? Like they usually say, talk to someone like they're in a second grade education level. No, we're going to college. We're going to a master's level. You know, you're going to see my DL that I got. So there's moments where it's just like, you feel it, right? And no one has ever sat down and told me, at least, that you are going to experience that. Like, these are the things that you will go through, and find ways to cope, find ways to manage, find ways to go through it. And so you're just stuck. The first time it happens, it's just like, wait. And I will sit there and say, excuse me, what are you trying to say? And then they'll sit there and be like, well, you know, you should be able to understand it, or I bet you can't understand it. And it's like, oh, okay, I got it. This is where we really are going. You know, you try to set a neutral ground by saying repeat, or can you, you know, something along those lines. And then when they repeat it and continue to treat you a certain way, it becomes problematic. And I've literally had to tell patients before, listen, I'm a doctor. I got my master's. I've done a lot of things. But today, you can get the doctor, you can get the Jamaican, you can get the girl from Newark. Who do you want? You know, like, I'm not dealing with it. I'm not. Like, pick, choose, and refuse. Like, we don't have to treat you. You do not have to be here. Like, it's gotten to that point. And, you know, you try your best, you try your hardest, but there's just some people that won't back down. And I'm sorry, I'm not one to back down either. And at the end of the day, I know that I have the law on my side. And I've had to call like Code Strong a couple of times in the hospital. It was just like, Code Strong, somebody come get these people. But
they called it Code Strong in your hospital. We called it Code M, Code Manpower.
No, yeah. So, and honestly, in the hospital, it was Black men that did that. It was 3 Black men that stepped to me. One literally came up to my face and was just like, even the people around him was like, sir, you know, you don't get into a Black woman's face. Even the white man was like, no, he did it. Like, it was bad. And
wow.
You take it one day at a time. After it, you're shaking up. I was shaking up so bad. Like, each time it doesn't get better, it doesn't get easier, it doesn't feel good. And then this whole team is coming. Everybody in the hospital the next day is just like, are you okay? And it becomes this big thing. It's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to understand at the end of the day. It's because you're a Black female, or it's because it's not even what you said or your actions. It's because of who you are. Before you even say anything, you walk into the door and people assume or want to misjudge you or treat you a certain way. It's disheartening. And learning how to cope with that can take you back a few steps. And then you got to build yourself back up for the next day and continue. It's hard. But, you know, culturally, I've had instances where I go in and I'm nervous because of my accent. My one patient that I remember till this day, I tell the story, is because I had a transgender patient. And honestly, it was my first transgender patient. And I was just like, what do I even call the person? And I was just like, I have a Jamaican accent. You know, people assume all Jamaicans are like homophobic and they're gonna affect you. So I went in with that perception. So I went to my attending, and at that time, my classmate was he identified with the LGBTQ community. So he was just laughing at me. He was just like, you know what, in all honesty, I'm laughing because I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your ability to realize within you your problems and where you are and what you want to do for this patient. And so he was just like, honestly, go in and tell them, you know, they're a man now. They were a man before, they're female now, and there's certain things we've got to do for the prostate, and then there's certain things we got to do for the breast and stuff that you have now. And I was like, oh, it's just that simple. I was working myself up. So as much as we talk about, you know, biases on one side, I had to acknowledge my bias on my side and work through that. And then that also brought back to me, like, what you have done, other people will do to you. So the grace and compassion you want, you also have to give to others. You know, so moments like that will bring you back to reality. But when you're going through it and you're the person in the seat being affected, oh, that grace and compassion goes away real quick.
I love it, Dr. Darko.
Yeah, so it's funny because so years ago I had locks all the way down my back. And I remember one patient asked me, "Are you Jamaican?" And I was like, "No." And I said, "Why did you ask?" And she goes, "Well, your hair." And I said, "Well, you know, you can have this hairstyle and not be Jamaican." She's like, "Oh yeah, I guess so." But
because
you know,
I too have hair.
I too have hair. That's right. You know, it's just an interesting, you know, it's interesting going through this and asking the question, you know, looking back and seeing, you know, was there ever a time that someone tried to belittle you and talk to you in a certain way, especially because you're a person of color, you're a Black person, you're a Black female. And I think I have experienced that. For sure. Sometimes you're never really sure, right? If that's the thing. but you kind of look around the room and you're like, well, you ain't talking to her like that. You're not talking to him like that, but you talking to me like that. And, I might be I might know more than the other people that you're talking to. I might be working harder than the other people that you're talking to, yet you continue to talk to me like this. And I actually, again, I have to really bring it back to my parents. Seriously. I don't think that there has ever been a time where I felt, in a way, I never felt that I was belittled. Like I never internalized that. And I think it's because of the way that my parents raised me. My parents, especially my mother, like my mother is the type of person, if someone is doing something that they're not supposed to do to you, she's like, what that got to do with me? Right? What does that person's view of me have to do with me? That says more about that person than it does about me. Therefore, the fact that this person is who they are, there's no way that I would ever take into consideration their opinion of me, because that person can't be worth much, and neither can their opinion be worth much. So therefore, whatever they think of me, I'm not going to internalize that. And so oftentimes when I'm walking into a room knowing, okay, I'm going to be the only Black person in this room, or if I'm in a room and people are talking to me a certain way, for me, just like that example I just gave you about the attending who was like berating me, I never felt embarrassed. I was never embarrassed by that, because for me, I was like, that says more about you. You berating me has nothing to do with me. That says something more about you. And so I think taking on that, taking that kind of, I don't know if you call that confidence. I don't know if you call that risk. I don't know what you call it. But for me, it has never been, I've never had the problem where I've felt like, oh, this person is thinking this about me, and now I feel like I have to X, Y, and Z. And that's not to say that I don't have any self-reflection, right? If I'm doing something and I know, okay, I could be better at it. If someone is giving me a criticism that I feel like, yeah, you've given me the criticism, it's valid, and I'm gonna go and work on that I have no problem with. But when you come at me with something that I'm just kind of like, your opinion of me actually does not even matter. Like, so I don't even know why you think I should weigh it into consideration of who I am. Like that literally has been my approach. And as I get older, it becomes more and more my approach. There are very few people whose opinion of me I feel matter, right? And, at the end of the day, I'm like, I come home to my husband, I come home to my family. These are the people who I feel like, yeah, your opinion of me actually matters, because you know who I am, and you care about me enough to know that if I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing, that you want the best for me. So you're going to say something that is going to be helpful and constructive, not something that is just going to belittle me and make you feel better for the fact that you said what you said. So, as I get older and older, kind of like Dr. Byrd was saying, you just start to realize that there are certain things that you have to just let roll off your back. And when I walk into a room, I walk in, almost like a white man. I feel like I get that white man confidence about myself. Like, you can't tell me nothing. You know what I mean? And this is like a real thing. Like, I literally walk in and I'm like, no, I'm going to walk in. I've literally walked into rooms where there's like almost like a boardroom setting, like a boardroom table. And I've literally sat at the head of the table because I'm like, well, the seat was empty. So I sat there.
Come on, empty seat. Take it up. Dr. Darko,
nobody else was sitting there. So I decided to sit there.
Take up space.
But that is also, that's not to, exert dominance or whatever, but that is also to just be like, no, I'm worthy to sit at the head of the table. I can sit here. I don't see why I shouldn't be able to sit here. So I think that that's really important. for, for us, as people of color, Black, brown people, to realize that you are worthy of sitting literally at the head of any table. You are worthy of leading any meeting. You are worthy of leading any initiative, and not necessarily having to worry about what people are going to think about you. And I know, trust me, I know that that's easier said than done. And I've been groomed in that, which is why I can speak as freely about it as, as this. So I do know that that's easier said than done. And that's not everybody's experience.